Hello, people. How are you doing? It's Brad again. The other day, I put up a video about another video by Jordan Peterson. And a couple of days after I put that video up, another video popped up on my YouTube feed in which Professor Peterson was being accosted at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, and not allowed to speak. And I found that pretty upsetting. So I posted something on Facebook because I was pissed off. And a lot of people reacted to that posting in ways that were strange to me. I don't think that a lot of the people who were posting their responses to my outrage understood why I was outraged. And the reason is, we had a group of people at McMaster University who ostensibly were standing up for the rights of marginalized people, transsexuals in particular, but there were people shouting things like, "This land is stolen land," and all sorts of things. So they're standing up for a whole gamut of issues, most of which Jordan Peterson, as far as I know, hasn't even talked about. And what was upsetting to me about this incident is, number one, it's going on a lot. For the last 5 years or so, this has become kind of a trend. When somebody shows up on a university campus for protesters to come and shout him down and make him stop saying what he's saying. And for me, the problem is, I've been interested in a lot of these issues that these people are ostensibly protesting about or supporting since 20 or more years before they were born. I was a member and am a member of Zero Defects, a political hardcore band who were against Reagan and standing up for marginalized people. And even though I'm a white, cisgendered, middle-aged now male, I've always had a problem fitting in, even from an early age. I had huge buck teeth when I was a child. I was ostracized, and then moved to Africa, where I found that being a minority race carried with it some burdens that I might not have been aware of had I never lived there. And then I moved to Japan and had it happen again for 11 years. So I do have a lot of concern for these issues. And what I see when I see a video like this video from McMaster College is a lot of people who think they are doing something to support these issues, but are actually tearing down a lot of the hard work that others who came before them have been trying to do for years, and turning a lot of the population against the very things that they're trying to ostensibly support. I suppose there will be people who will, put comments below my YouTube video saying I'm straight-splaining or something-splaining the issue to people, and that I don't really understand. Well, I'm not going to claim I understand every transgender issue in the world, but I do understand some of these issues in ways that you might not suspect if you didn't know me. So I think it's very important to be aware that not everyone who you slot into a category actually fits the category as well as you think they do. But there's a bigger issue at stake, and I think a more general issue that we can talk about here, and that is, do you want to solve the problem, or do you want to be right? I wrote a blog about this, and I'd like to kind of speak about this issue, because I think a lot of people, to quote a cliche, have their hearts in the right place, but are falling prey to a very human problem, which is the need to be right. Now, I don't know where this need to be right actually came from, but I have a theory. I believe that our brain and body system evolved to help us survive in the wild and not to help us make coherent political arguments. I believe what happens to us is that we become identified with the ego, with the sense of self, with what the Buddhists call the false sense of self. And because of that, our survival instinct gets mixed up. In the old days, 1,000,000 years ago, we were defending ourselves with a spear against a triceratops who was trying to eat us. But nowadays, that same instinct is trying to defend ourselves with a Facebook post against the snowflakes or the bigots who are trying to destroy our ego. And we become much more concerned with defending our ego than with actually trying to solve the specific problem that we are ostensibly worried about. Dogen talks about this in a little book called Shobogenzo Zui Monkey, which is not Japanese for Shobogenzo for sea monkeys. This is a book that was compiled by Koun Eijo, who is one of his students, based on talks that he listened to from Dogen. So, although Dogen wrote a lot of stuff himself, the Shobogenzo Zui Monkey was not actually written by Dogen, but was written by Eijo based on what Dogen said. I think it's probably fairly reliable. The particular translation I'm looking at is the official translation, I guess, by the Soto Shu. That's the Soto organization in Japan. This is their English translation by Shohaku Okumura, who's always a reliable person, and Tom Wright. I don't know his pedigree myself. In this book, there are a bunch of interesting little lectures and things that Dogen gave to his students about issues that he didn't really address in his main work in Shobogenzo. I'm going to read to you a little part of one. It's just marked 522. I think it's sort of a chapter verse thing like they do with the Bible. An ancient person said, "It is not bad to be defeated in front of the wise, but do not win in front of the stupid." When someone misunderstands what you know well, Dogen says, speaking ill of him is your own error. So, when you are faced with somebody who opposes you, sometimes being right is not the most important thing. What's more important is finding a real viable solution to the problem. And sometimes that involves compromise, and sometimes that involves phrasing what you want to say carefully so as not to insult the other person. And sometimes it involves a whole lot of things, but it doesn't involve going around and shouting the person down and calling him transphobic piece of shit. That will only make the person defensive. And an interesting quirk of the human ego, and I see myself do this all the time, is sometimes even when you know you're wrong about a position, if somebody insults you, what you'll be more likely to do, what I am often more likely to do, is respond to the insult and therefore end up holding on more tightly to a position that maybe I was about to let go of before you came along and insulted me. This is a really important thing, especially when you're talking to people who haven't done this sort of work on themselves. And, you know who I'm talking about, okay? So it's really important to work with the situation to try to solve the situation rather than try to defend your own ego in it. Here's another thing Dogen says on that subject. While I was staying at Kenninji, which is a temple in Japan that Dogen taught at before he moved to Eiheiji, many people asked about the Dharma. So he's talking about people just wandering in off the streets wanting to know a little bit about Buddhism, as they do at Zen centers even today. Among them, there were some strange opinions or mistaken views. Boy, oh boy, we get a lot of those. You get people coming into the Zen center asking you about the secret and all sorts of crazy stuff. However, I kept this deep in my heart. I only talked about the virtue of the Dharma as it is, instead of criticizing the mistaken views of others. I avoided trouble in that way. A foolish person, firmly attached to his own opinions, always gets angry, saying that his virtuous predecessors have been slandered. The wise and sincere person realizes and reforms his own mistakes and those of his virtuous predecessors without having them pointed out by others. Only if he understands the true meaning of Buddha Dharma. You should ponder this thoroughly. I think when we are passionate about some issue, especially a political issue, especially in these days when things seem so urgent, when we have a president who seems unhinged, and when you have an opposition to that president who seems almost as unhinged as the president himself, then it's important to try to find a way through that doesn't insult the other side and thus make them defensive, but instead holds the position and helps to try to move things in the proper direction. This is very difficult, and it takes work, and it takes introspection, and it takes looking into yourself very deeply and very honestly, and not saying, well, I just did this because blah, 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 and he's the bad one, and you can't give in to that. You have to be firm and flexible at the same time. So that's my message for the day. Hope you enjoyed it. If you liked what you read, you can donate on my Patreon or Patreon page. It's somewhere down there, or my PayPal version, which is also somewhere down there. And look at my blog and buy all my damn books. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate your support. Bye.